we cover the whole darn thing. What am I going to do all day tomorrow?
Go to the beach, man.
Yeah, does it look like I go to the beach?
With a lot of protection on. Yeah.
Can I spray that on me? Alright, so I told you I want to pick a fight with you. I don't buy into any of this ceramic spray bull crap.
Okay.
So, convince me why. I need something different.
Well, okay. Okay. I guess the first thing that I would do is kind of explain why this exists.
Yeah, please.
Where it came from, because I think a lot of people misunderstand and think that, oh, that's just simply a marketing play, or that's a consumer grade product. Why would I care? I'm a hardcore detailer, whatever. This was something that we originally set out, this formula and this format and everything, and that technology. We've been working on that for a while, and it was going to be for coating maintenance. We don't sell coating in the US right now, but we have for like 10 years internationally. And we were looking to kind of up the game on something that would be used as a maintainer for coatings. So quick aside on that. You've got coating longevity in terms, you hear people say, oh, it's a 5-year coating, a 1-year coating, whatever, your ceramic coating. Well, you have two different things you can measure. How long is the coating physically there? Mm-hmm. And how long is it still displaying the hydrophobic properties that most people use to say, I have a coating or I don't?
Right, is it contaminated, is it scratched?
Is it simply just the...
Do I have water spots? I mean, it's 5 years, come on. I mean,
you're talking microns of thickness, does it really last that long? There's all these different questions.
Right.
Ceramics in general is obviously controversy laden, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of claims, a lot of, strong claims that, maybe a little too far. But anyway, we wanted to have something for, if you're going to maintain a ceramic coating, a lot of people say, okay, I have an SiO2 base or a polysiloxane, depending on which product it is, base coating. Why would I want to cover that with an inferior technology of a polymer or a sealant or a wax? Why would I want to put a wax on top of my coating, right?
Well, a lot of times the coating would completely reject it anyway.
Depending on the product and of the two products,
it may not play well together, and you put it on and washes off.
Right, that is very possible with some of them. Now you also might have a coating where, let's say after a year or two, the hydrophobics are essentially gone. You can you can't tell it's even there. But that does not mean that the coating is gone.
So what happens to a coating when that happens? The coating, so the resin, so silicon dioxide is what makes the resin more stout. Right, so we have these silicon dioxide particles. Ivan LaCroix always told me this was like Jello. So take Jello and then put fruit in Jello, and the silicon dioxide is like the fruit inside the Jello. So what happens when the thing becomes less hydrophobic? What happens to it?
So there are different ways that you can do that. You can contaminate it.
Okay, so contamination would change the contact angle.
Yep.
And will hold onto water more, and you lose your beading or your sheeting capability.
Yes. It'll become hydrophilic, where it holds onto water like an unprotected vehicle or a very oxidized surface will tend to cling in the water, right?
Right.
So that can be temporary. It can be jammed up with something. Some coatings, you can apply heat to them, whether it's in the sun or a heat gun or an IR lamp, and it will restructure and reflow that to a degree and rejuvenate some of those hydrophobic properties. So you can beat it up, let's say, with a super degreaser, or some people like to use these, for whatever reason, test all these crazy chemicals on coatings, right? And that may chemically react and make that hydrophobic property stop or diminish, right? The contact angle gets worse. The way that the water rolls off, the receding angles, all these things.
You could have residue left over from the all-purpose cleaner.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And so someone may make a judgment, oh, that coating failed, because when they're hitting it with water, that's the only way they can really tell, right? Because it's so thin, they can't measure it. They're not seeing the same properties. Coating's gone or it's failed. You see
the only other way I know how to tell is you try to put another coating on and it doesn't stick.
Maybe. But then again, there could be some coatings that won't reject.
Yeah.
So some of them are formulated in a way where if you wait too long between them, they may reject additional coatings. Others are intentionally made so that you can come back a year later and top it off with another coating. So there's just a million variables, right?
Right.
everyone thinks that all the coatings are the same, and yeah, there may be some private labeling stuff going on, but there's actually quite a bit
There's a lot of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Just like saying, look at compounds. There's a lot of different properties from one to the next. Same with coatings. But so anyway, you may have the hydrophobic dip. The other thing is people that are spending all this money and that are obsessive about the condition of their vehicle and they want it to last. You just spent $2,000, $2,500, whatever it is, on getting your car corrected and coated by a professional. This is a sacrificial barrier for your sacrificial barrier, right? So for those guys, they're saying, because I want that coating to last a long time, I'm willing to maybe once every 3 or 6 months put a topper on, or maybe even more frequently than that, because frankly, they still like to wipe their cars down, right? That is just a way for them to keep something on there so that if someone does brush into their car, if the guy doing land maintenance is weed whacking and stuff flying at your car, whatever it is, bird droppings, these things, it's just one more layer of protection for your protection. It's getting a little ridiculous for some people, I get it, totally. But at the same time, if you love to look at your car when you wash it or when it rains, and you enjoy watching that water and the dirt fly off of it, then this or products like this are a way to deliver that where it's always at peak performance.
But how much, so we have, what is your take on, we have beading
Okay.
and we have protection.
Not necessarily one and the same,
Correct.
right?
You can bead like crazy, but the product that's on the surface is, in many cases, more chemical susceptible to issues of etching or water spotting or issues like that.
I think the reason that the collective group of detailers and everybody and just average consumers associate beading with protection is that obviously in the past all the waxes that they were using beaded, and that's kind of a behavioral thing, but beyond that, how else can they tell by looking at it that it's protected?
Well, the other way would be for it to be hydrophilic, where it just sheets.
In theory, yeah, but that's also so counter to what most people think.
Right.
The more high-end people that are way into this stuff love the idea of a hydrophilic coating. The average consumer, if you put a hydrophilic coating on
look, I've talked to many guys who make it, they said they can't sell it. No one will buy it. I've talked to chemists who make this stuff and they said, look, I have it, it's great, but we didn't sell any of it.
Right. I mean, that's a big part of it, right? Is that most people want the beading. Frankly, people love to take pictures of beads. I mean, they're neat, they're fun. It's fun to watch it move around on the paint. I think that's part of it, honestly.
I can relate to that. My favorite thing to do is to run the back of my hand, which you should never do, down the side of the car after it's been protected, corrected and protected.
So the beading and this obsession with that, that obviously there's some products that are going to be more strictly for making beads, and there are going to be other products that make beads but are aimed more at, let's say, gloss, darkness. You can have a product that's super glossy, you can have a product that makes your paint darker, and you can have a product that does a blending of those two, slickness. You can do all these protective things. I could show you a product that does all of that and is sticky, or is neutral, or super slick, right? So there's all these different things. We talked about all the levers on designing a compound. You can do that also with a sealant, with the wax, with the coating. You can dial in the different attributes based on what you're trying to do. So this is something that will give you slickness, which when you talk about protection, and what is a coating, which we're not saying this is, can't be any more clear. You can look on the bottle, it doesn't say coating anywhere at all. A lot of the protection you're getting from a coating is from slickness. It's not hardness, it's more about slickness. There's been some marketing suggesting otherwise by some, but I would disagree with that. I think we would disagree with that, and that you're getting a deflection aspect that allows things that would have scratched to instead be more likely to bounce off because of that slickness. That's what allows you to not, you can take a wax and put it on a car. There's no 9H to a wax, right? And you rub something across the paint and it won't scratch or mar it. You do it on the same paint bare and it will scratch or mar it. Well, there's no hardness, so how is it protecting it? Slickness. So that's one of those things that people get very wrong, and that they lean, in my opinion, or a lot of us share this, too hard about the hardness of coatings.
To me, the biggest difference between a resin delivered or whether it's titanium dioxide or magnesium carbide or silicon dioxide, to me the main advantage is it tends to grab onto the clear coat a little bit hard.
Yeah.
It grabs on and holds longer
Right.
than wax.
Yeah.
That's the big
That's
difference.
that's one of the big benefits, is that it is a very durable bond,
Correct.
right?
Right. But it takes on the characteristic of the paint generally. So
can.
if the paint is really soft, then your coating likely is going to scratch. Maybe not as easily because it is slicker.
Right.
But if you
not
negate
so
the
hard.
slickness by applying pressure, then you have a chance of scratching it just like you would a soft paint.
Yeah. If you're talking about thickness, a couple sheets of paper is what you're dealing with, for your clear coat on your car.
Mm-hmm.
When you're talking a coating, and think, how much material you shoot on a car when you're clearing your car? It's a heck of a lot more than the 30 to 50 milliliters that you're putting on your car out of your coating, right? And a lot of that is
It's
going
evaporated and
Yes.
wasted, yeah.
So the amount of material you're leaving behind is quite small. To expect that to somehow be that much more protective from a hardness perspective than that clear coat doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The other thing is, you ever see a car that's been hit, let's say on a plastic bumper, and it gets punched in and that thing deforms, and you're able to, you ever see people use the heat gun in the cold water and they re-pop it out, or you do a PDR? If that was truly hard and didn't have an elasticity to it, it'd crack.
Right.
If you go too far, it will, but the fact that can flow and crack, not crack to a degree, is an indication that's not a hard surface. So to put on microns worth of coating and think that you've suddenly made that much harder it's kind of ridiculous.
Right.
In a lot of cases.
And to add what is a coating thickness? A half a micron?
Depending on the coating, yeah.
Yeah, so let's say a half to 2 microns on a 140 micron surface.
Yeah. And that's why a lot of those tests for 9H are done not on paint. If you actually look into if you check the asterisk and go chase that down and see what was really being done, that's being done on a metal panel. So is your paint 9H when you put it on there? No. It's 9H on a metal panel.
We're not saying that it's not legit and it doesn't
Nope.
work and it is the state-of-the-art technology. we'll
Exactly.
have
So
today.
that's the thing to separate, right? Is, the reason we want to talk about this is you're talking about claims and why and how does it actually work and what's real and what's true and what's not. I think coatings can be a fantastic thing. I put coatings on my own vehicles. I think that for a certain type of owner, it's a great idea, a fantastic idea. I totally, completely understand coatings. I think that some of what's said out there is overstated and people's expectations aren't necessarily aligned with the product. They require their own regimen of maintenance. You've got to maintain your coating. So back to why this exists. Originally it was being developed in the Pro line for the Pro line, not in no way were we thinking of retail with it. And it was intended to be something that you could put on top of an already hydrophobic or oleophobic surface, and it would be able to bond, and it would be able to provide an additional sacrificial barrier that gives you the hydrophobics, the gloss, and the slickness. And you could still have the coating on your car, but maybe those things died down. Now you can not have to pay to completely redo that. You could put a product like this on top of that older coating, and it's like it's brand new again. I challenge you, I could do a blind test where I could put this on a door, on pick your coating door, and do water testing with pressure washers and contact angles and release and all that, and I'd be amazed if you could tell the difference. Because you can achieve that. Now, what this is not going to do is it's not going to last for years. It's not going to bond to the paint for years. It's not going to become one with the paint in that way that a coating can. But it's also not going to require that amount of work.
Why do you guys even choose a number, a month? How many months? I mean, you kind of have to, don't you?
It's one of those things where customers like to call, you saw the customer solutions out. People want to call in, how long does this last? That's probably the most common question for any wax or sealant, because we're not the only ones making these types of products, and everyone likes to compare them and what's going to last longer, right? So you kind of do. Now, we haven't actually, on this particular product, we've not decided to really emphasize a length of time. I think the users here in the testing and development have seen as much as 6 months without any real discernible difference, but that's on a car that's sitting outside not getting physically touched much. On another car, you may get a month out of it if it's getting hammered with nasty acid rain or maybe snow or mud or something like that. So environmental things will massively change the durability.
Well, wouldn't your recommendation be just put it on every time you wash the car?
Well,
or will you get buildup? Have you noticed any buildup if you put it on too often?
So you can layer this to a degree, but like traditional waxes or sealants, there's a point where like will dissolve like, and you only can go so far. That would apply here. You're mostly going to be going for even coverage, and that's one of the reasons we recommend 2 coats for a lot of products, is that you want to make sure you evenly coat everything. That's the main
you
benefit.
Miss spots. And,
yeah. But I will use this personally as a drying aid every single time I wash a vehicle. And it's super, super slick. I put it on either on my drying towel, 1 or 2 shots per panel, or I will lightly mist it on the panel. You do not need a lot of product.
Is this water activated or no?
No.
Okay, so you're going to actually physically wipe it on. I'm not going to spray it on and hose it off.
Okay, so
because there's a lot of different applications of this type of product. So what's the proper application?
What I would be clear about activated, when I hear activated, I'm thinking like a chemical reaction. No. Activated in the sense of the water is definitely intended to help spread it. Yes. It's also, there's stuff in here that is not meant to stay there forever. That's part of the application process. And using water helps to remove the parts that aren't meant to stay and leave behind the parts that are. So I ideally, if I'm going to use it as a drying aid, I've got a semi-damp towel as I'm doing that. So I've got some water there so that I'm making sure I'm not getting any kind of a streaking issue or leaving too much. Now, if you're going to do a spray on rinse off method, which is something we definitely recommend and talk about here, you would lightly spray it on and then rinse top to bottom. The stronger your stream of water, the better. A lot of people are like afraid that, I don't want to rinse it all off.
So a pressure washer.
Yeah, a pressure washer is most ideal. Wide fan is great.
One panel at a time?
No, the whole car. And you don't need to worry about this drying on the car. Just don't do this out in super hot sun, right? As long as the temperature's not excessive. And just rinse it down. Our biggest problem developing this was that we ran out of cars to test because it spreads like crazy. And when you go to pressure wash, it's all of a sudden on 3 panels, and we only wanted to do 1 door. So the direction you spray will dictate where it goes running off to. And that very thin layer of product intentionally is going to spread out. It's meant to be so thin that when you go to wipe it off, you shouldn't really feel resistance. It would be closer to applying like a traditional, like ultimate quick wax, like a very thin, not something that needs to be sprayed on, let cured, dried, like a traditional wax. This is more like in the realm of a spray wax or spray detailer in terms of how much resistance you should feel. It'll be very, very minimal. If you're struggling to remove this product, you used way too much or you did not rinse it properly. One of those two. If you use more than like this much to do your car, you've used too much product. You'll have a terrible experience if you do that. Just like if you use any product completely wrong, it's not going to be a great experience, right?
So 2 options: lightly mist, water.
Yeah.
Water application, not activation.
Yeah.
Got it? I got the chemistry.
Yeah.
Or I spray it on a towel, spread it around, and then hose it down with my pressure washer.
You don't even necessarily have to hose it down if you're using a damp towel and you don't use too much product.
Okay.
I just flip to a dry side because like when I use a drying aid, like I said, I'm just going to hit 1 or 2 shots per panel on average. And then I'm going to flip to a dry side and do a final wipe and I'm done. I'm not going back.
I like that dual that option to do it both ways, because then I would want another drying aid in order to dry the car if I was going to just water apply.
This became my drying aid. That's my preferred method of application for sure. The other controversy, if you will, about how to use it, the directions, make sure to get the best results. What we talk about there are 2 methods that are discussed here. If you have a surface that has been fully and properly prepped or is already protected with another wax sealant or coating, then you are gonna be able to spray that on, nice thin coat, rinse it off, and then dry your car and be done. If you have oxidation, swirls even, just a more neglected surface, and it doesn't have to be super hammered, but just a little bit more neglected. If you just try to spray it on and then rinse it off, it may not bond well. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is if the surface is hydrophilic, so you've got water clinging all over the place, this is gonna hit that water and it's not gonna hit the paint. It's not gonna punch through that water. That was by design. And the downside to that though is that if you just spray it on that first time on a car that's been neglected, it may not bond well. Now, if you've got any of this other protection, this stuff will just stick very easily. Now, in that situation, what we recommend is establishing the base. So it's kind of like the wax as you dry method.
Mm-hmm.
We just recommend putting a little bit more of a thick coat and directly using a towel that first time to go over that area and make sure you establish an even layer. And think of it as, from a surface tension standpoint, if you've got, all these different issues and you're putting in this material and it's really small, you don't get the even surface tension. Whereas if you've compounded and polished everything and it's very close to level, you're gonna get this all along the top evenly distributed, and that creates a surface tension or energy that creates that hydrophobic effect that you recognize as it's working, right? So that's why when you do a base coat, you can push in more product into the valleys and you establish an even layer. It fills this in. The next time you can spray the little guys on top and they're able to work. So that's why there's two methods on there. That's why we recommend establishing the base coat. As a general rule of thumb, we say you should do it every time, but if you've been waxing and loading your car up with polymers or whatever you got on there, you probably don't need to, but it doesn't hurt anything to do that. And that's if you want to use the spray the product on, rinse it off, and then dry your car method. Then use it as a drying aid. Mix that, just put it on your drying towel or right on the panel and then just wipe it off when you dry it.
So what's in it? Roughly.
So,
why are you calling it wax? Is there wax in there?
So I'll make sense of the name, hopefully.
Okay.
Hybrid ceramic wax is the full name of that product. We definitely sat down, consciously had a conversation with all the chemists, the head of R&D, the marketing department, everybody kind of got together, product developers, and said, what's the right thing to do? What is accurate based on the chemistry? We had the chemist who made the product, formulated it from the ground up, and we talked through all of those aspects and made sure that it fit our brand. We don't feel comfortable saying this is a ceramic, just straight ceramic. In fact, even just technically what is ceramic, a lot of people will argue that's become a term that this industry, the automotive car care industry, has adopted a meaning for ceramic that some scientists would say is not accurate in a ceramic coating ever, right? Some people would look at some definitions, and there's different definitions, that say it involves sintering and heat application, and you get ceramic coated headers and no way related to a ceramic coated car. That's a different kind of ceramic. We didn't create that term, we didn't put that into the universe. That's something that, just like sealant or cleaner wax, that's a term that people now recognize and makes sense to people, right? Ceramic is a term that means something to people. Now, we said hybrid and wax on either end of that as qualifiers to bring it down a notch in our minds, to say, hey, look, we're not telling you this is a coating in a bottle. That's not what this is. But what this is going to do is give you many of those properties of a ceramic coating in a significantly easier application that anybody can apply. That's the main idea. Now, why wax when there's no wax in this? Wax is a term, both legally and technically, that refers not just to natural components in a protection, like a carnauba. Wax can refer simply to something that is applied as a protective layer over paint. That's an accurate description for wax. The extreme majority of the population could tell you what wax is. They may not be able to tell you what a sealant is. That's a term that does not resonate with everybody. So wax is just to say this is think of this as, instead of wax, this is your protection. This is a protective layer, just like any other wax or sealant that we sell in that sense. In terms of the chemistry, unique.
What was that other stuff I just put on the Explorer out there?
Fast finish.
Doesn't that call it fast finish wax or something like that? That's not a wax either.
In quotes, it says the fastest way to wax your car.
Yeah. That's what I was reading.
And that's the idea.
That's a polymer sealant, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
So people look at that and think, what the heck is this? You know, this is an aerosol can. This is so new.
So we're saying wax is a verb.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
You know, it accurately is. It's just different organizations and in different situations will reference terms differently. You're getting into the nitty gritty of like the difference between a bug and an insect.
Yeah, you don't have to convince me. I don't freaking care. You know,
Yeah.
just give me the bottle. You can take the label off. And does it work?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to complain about the bottle because I want a better bottle. You know, and all. So.
Don't we all? But the other thing too, I'd say is, you know, the we say advanced SiO2 technology. Now,
So is there SiO2 in it?
yes, absolutely,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay. I wasn't sure if if there was a verb for SiO2 now.
No. There's some confusion as to what exactly is the benefit of SiO2.
Yeah.
Is it an overused term? That's,
Absolutely.
you know, could it be?
Everything is frickin' SiO2.
Right.
Unless it
Right.
doesn't have silicone in it, it has it in it.
Some variants.
Specifically, right.
The other thing too is SiO2. It's like saying polymer to a chemist. It can cover a wide range of things, right? There are variations of SiO2 based formulations that have a particular type of attribute that is very beneficial. That is why you've seen most of these ceramic coatings lean towards talking about SiO2 or SiO. We have a coating internationally that's just SiO, for example. And that's a polysiloxane coating, right? We are very confident we would not put that on there. You know, you don't stay in business for 118 years by lying about what your products are. We're extremely transparent about what our products are, but at the same time, the amount of time, energy, and effort that went into developing that formula, I can tell you, the chemists poured their heart and soul into making that work the way that it does. You're not going to put the whole recipe out on the internet just so that you can make one guy feel better because he doesn't believe you. That's just not how that works. You know, the formula is what it is. We've updated some of the information we put on our forum so that people want a little bit more detailed information, but we're not going to put the whole recipe out there. That doesn't make any sense. If you don't believe it, then don't buy it.
I've never seen anybody else. I've been yelling at you earlier today. I'm like, why don't we just show everybody what everything is?
Yeah.
And as we're peeking through the window of the no access chemistry lab. But nobody does. I mean, I get why. They don't just steal it.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, you have some Chinese, Meguiars that'll be here in a red bottle.
That's happened, by the way.
Yeah, sure.
Literally ran into it at a trade show. It was amazing. But
yeah.
We have a lab full of PhDs, people with multiple PhDs. Their life's work. Some of these guys have been here, I think, 20 plus years. Several of them. The resource that goes into developing these formulas in-house, the amount of work, you're going to protect that. That's an important thing. That's what separates, in our mind, a big component of what separates us from others who, made, private label or whatever. I mean, that's just not what we're doing. We are designing these things.
It's been interesting,
fine-tuned.
in my Facebook group, all of a sudden there's I don't know where this came from, but there's this contingent of people that keep throwing SDS sheets in my face. I'm like, well, what is that? An SDS sheet, well, it used to be MSDS, but now SDS is a safety data sheet, which is designed for transport.
Yeah. Transport, and in the U.S., and it's different in different parts of the world, in the U.S.
For OSHA, yeah.
Right, which is a safety compliance thing.
Say, hey, this is what you would do if this is what you should do for washing out or reducing
your eyes.
Yes. So it doesn't tell you anything. It's not like it's giving you the chemical formula on a sheet of paper.
Right.
I have to deal with them all the time because I ship internationally and transport these chemicals all over the place. But I don't know why this current shift toward, have you seen, someone did this with one an interior cleaner saying, well, this has whatever, hexylene or some bull crap. I said, but in what context? You know, in what concentration? What does that even, what does that matter?
And we talked about how SiO2 comes in many, and there are ways to build onto and around that matrix that make it have very different properties and behaviors. It comes in different forms. Some forms require a certain amount of disclosure on an SDS.
Yes.
Others do not.
Right.
You know, and that's why the experts, you know, trust me, we're putting this through a legal and regulatory check process.
And you're going to give people the minimum amount of information possible.
Right. And you've got trade secret aspects.
Right.
I've heard of it being done that there are formulas that are listed out there where SDSs, there's ingredients added in there just to throw people off the trail. You never really know what a product is just by looking at SDS.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've looked at SDSs of products that literally say that they're 97 or 98% water, but I look at what it does and it's pretty impressive. You know, so it's like, okay, if some of those products that exist out there have 97% water according to this SDS or whatever, but they have ranges too. You also see some people say between 1 and 5 or 5 and 15%. That's to try and protect, you know, trade secrets and ranges in manufacturing and other reasons too. But
Right, and it's irrelevant.
for the most part,
Largely, it's irrelevant.
yeah. And for
Especially
you to use this and get a good result,
right,
100%.
right. It's especially irrelevant if you're putting it into application. You know, if you're using the product.
Yeah, professionals, you know, in a professional environment where they're getting inspections and they need OSHA compliance, you need to have an SDS available or an OSHA compliant label. That makes sense. But to use the product, most of the time, no.
Yeah,
No.
and that's where we get into the whole argument of specifications, right? With any product, with any car, with any amplifier, with anything where you start to just live life on a spec comparison.
Yeah.
So now we're living life on a spec comparison of something that we don't know what the specs are.
Yeah.
We don't even know what the control set is. We don't know. So the only real comparison you have is to go out in the real world. And I think that's why a lot of guys you see where they'll attempt to do torture tests with using all-purpose cleaners and things like that.
Yep.
Where you wipe something on, use all-purpose cleaner, wipe it off, like, oh, see, that one stopped working.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a very good control set or not a very good, you know, theoretical test.
Yeah, it's not necessarily representative of what the product will face in the real world.
I think the tests do really well. Like you've seen, there's a guy in Texas who did. He taped off a hood, and like his video series was like over like 9 months or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Where he had like he had all the Chinese. No, I forget what this is. It wasn't. It was a different guy.
No.
This was like a really intense test where he had like Kenzo coating and C-quartz and like all these different options taped off on a hood.
And just sitting outside getting baked.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think why do people use an APC or a degreaser or something like that to test something like this? I think part of it is it's something to watch, it's something different. I think part of it is how do you accelerate and demonstrate in video? How can you try and create something that you can compare A, B, and C without having a weather lab where you know where you can.
And part of the I don't really care on this product because I'm going to put it on every time.
Yeah.
I don't care how long it lasts.
There's that too.
If you're going to put it on every time you wash the car, then who cares?
Yeah. Longevity is going to matter.
Makes it a week.
Differently to different people. If they're only washing their car once every couple of months, then it probably matters more to them. And then also, I would say, let's say you're in an area that rains a lot, or you're in an area where you have snow, or you take it through tunnel washes, touchless tunnel washes that use harsher chemicals. Okay, then in all of those circumstances, having a decent amount of durability of some kind to those elements has benefit, because when you do go to wash it, you're going to still have more of that product there, which is going to be a sacrificial barrier, which makes it gentler, you know, and less likely to mar or scratch when you remove it. I mean, I personally, like when I used to detail for a living on a regular basis, I would charge more the first time I serviced an account for basic wash type stuff, because I knew it would take me longer. Now, once I've put protection on a vehicle, I can wash and wax that half the time, because it's not going to hold on to as much water, it's not going to hold on to the dirt, the stains. It's easier to clean, to wash and dry, right? So, you know, for me, that was a benefit, you know, in personal experience with detailing. And I think that's why a lot of people like to have these products. When you go to wash your car at home, if you have this on there, it is significantly easier to get things off and then dry your vehicle.
How much, isn't this like pretty inexpensive? What is,
It's about $15.
depending on where you get it?
Yeah, and when I use that on my truck at home, so that's my regular basis comparison would be this, and then my wife's Mustang. Out of a one bottle, I mean, that's gonna last me 6 months between the two of them. You get many vehicles. I've seen posts where people I see I'm having a hard time, and there's like this much juice left, and they're like, how many times did you use it? Well, just this once, and there's one car. I'm like, that makes sense. That'd be like putting 90% of a bottle of wax on your car. It's the same exact concept, right? It's just entirely too much product. We'd love to sell you a bottle every time you wash your car, but I'd also like you to have a good experience so that you enjoy it, right? So then we're gonna tell you the best way to get the best results where you enjoy yourself is less. Less is more. And when you're spraying this on the car, another tip too, if you're spraying it this close, you can't see from the camera, but if you're this close and you're spraying it, what you're gonna see is that spray pattern is gonna be big globs of product.
Yeah.
You wanna step back so that you're getting a spray pattern that's much larger, and so it's a finer mist, because it's gonna be easier to rinse and spread that product or to then wipe that off. You don't need gobs of product. You just don't. You're gonna fight it, and it's gonna make a worse experience for no benefit whatsoever. So less is more with that. Just make sure you establish the base coat, like that we talked about. Once you do that, you should immediately, if you put the base coat on there, rinse your car, you should see that beading everywhere. If it's super neglected or it was very hydrophilic, you may need to put another spray on application at that point and then dry it and you're done. But you should be good after the base coat. And then if you're not doing it every time you wash your car, if maybe you're on a tighter budget, that's fine, I totally get that. Then use it every couple of months. At a minimum is what I recommend personally, just to make sure that it's always everywhere and at full strength. That's how I personally would look at that.
So it's not that complicated.
It's not.
It's just a product
Yeah,
that is used as drying aid or a short-term sealant, wax,
Yeah.
whatever the heck you want to call it.
If people need to put it in a category that makes more sense, is more relatable, think of it as our most advanced spray sealant. That's another way that, if that makes more sense to somebody, then I can't get over the fact that it has the word ceramic. Okay, great, call it in your mind a sealant and you'll love it. As far as what it does and how it works, it's phenomenal as a consumer grade or a pro grade product. In fact, we have car washes and detail centers that normally are buying about a 5-gallon, who are right now buying these by the case and using this as a quick and easy way to put on a legitimate sealant onto a car. And that's in a professional environment. And some of the local distributors that service the detailers, they're coming in and buying a couple of cases at a time and using it to service. When they're washing 3 to 10 or 12 cars a day, they're putting it on all of them as an upsell, great opportunity for a fantastic, and they use it as their drying aid, right? Doesn't take them any extra time, reduces the chance of potentially swirling, every time you touch your paint, it's great lubricant. So, and you'll feel too, if you put that on a panel and you don't on another, and you dry them, and then you run the back of your hand on them, you will feel a significant bump in slickness from that. It's definitely something that was an intentional aspect of that product.
Cool. Yeah, there's been tons and tons of stuff online. I've seen videos of applications, so I don't think we really need to go into that. You've pretty much touched on that, but I think that covers the detail of this thing.
Yeah. It isn't rocket science to use. It didn't exactly use rocket science, but pretty advanced chemistry, to get where we're at with that. But
cool. I think that's the only questions I have on it. I think we covered the whole darn thing. What am I going to do all day tomorrow?
go to the beach, man.
Yeah, I look like I go to the beach.
With a lot of protection on. Yeah.
Can I spray that on me?
Some sunscreen, long sleeves, and a hat, and then go to the beach.
force pulls you back, your foot naturally comes off the gas. You have to keep your foot to the floor.